with approval of the March 11 meeting minutes for the ATWG. So I think the next step is to get a motion to approve, and then we'll do roll call.
Everett, it's a little hard to hear you. I'm not sure if your headset's.
I think these things might be dying. I've heard that. Could you hear that? Can I get a motion to approve?
Sam Hassanen, City Vista, motion to approve ATWG minutes.
Thank you, Sam. And then we'll do roll call. Is that right, Alex?
I apologize. I was on mute. You have to have a second.
Okay, so Sam first. Andy in the chat second.
Perfect.
And then I'll go call out jurisdictions. Is that how we should do it?
Yes, please. Or per your member group agency membership down the line with, and then for those that are being represented to mention their name, please.
Okay, let's start. Carlsbad. Can't see everyone here on the screen, but Carlsbad. Oh, Ed Alberto. You say aye?
Or you could raise your hand, that'd be great. I had, yes, Alberto raising his hand is aye.
Okay. Chula Vista is next. I see Frank's hand. Coronado.
Perfect, thank you. Frank Rivera, Chula Vista.
Coronado not seeing. Moving down, Del Mar.
Everett, I see Howard Lee also raising his hand, and Kristen Hakun.
Okay, Howard's for Coronado. El Cajon. Thank you, Paul. Encinitas.
Yes, Abe Bandiger.
Thank you, Abe. Escondido. Thank you, Craig. Imperial Beach. Thank you, Stefan. La Mesa.
Is that Misty Thompson, Everett?
Let's see a hand there. Lemon Grove. Okay, National City. Oceanside. Howard, are you out there? No Howard today? Okay. Poway. And then finally myself, City of San Diego, yes. Okay, and then
Okay.
thank you, everyone. Next is 2B, and that's for the CTAC SANTEC meeting.
Hey, Everett, sorry. Do you mind if we continue down the list? Is it okay? if I
Oh,
jump
sorry,
in.
I missed that. Oh, second page, right?
Yeah,
You're
it's
right.
okay.
There are more. Minji, or sorry, City of Santee.
Yeah, I'm not sure I can vote on this. I'm not a formal
Yeah,
rep,
sorry,
but
Minji, I called you. I was reading the SANTEC, but ATWG Santee.
I suppose that would be Jeff.
yeah,
then.
can I vote on?
You can,
Yeah,
Minji.
that,
If you're here for him, yeah. Okay, thank you.
okay, yeah, I'll approve.
Solana Beach.
Most Samak City of Solana Beach. Jim Greenstein was there, so I vote for him. Yes.
Great, thank you. Vista. Sam, thank you. County of San Diego. Hey, Ernie. Sending for Zubir, thank you. And MTS and NCTD, any representatives there? Beverly, thank you. Okay, Josh, I think that made it through.
Almost. County Bike Coalition.
I saw Andy's hand earlier.
Oh, cool. Okay, kind of that. Sorry, I thought that was, I got that confused with Imperial Beach.
He
Bike
was
SD.
he was the second.
Aye.
Okay, cool. Bike SD. Thank you, Nicole. Circulate, San Diego. Safe routes to school, Christine Schindler or Kristen Hockham.
Kirsten Hockham, hi, here.
Hi, excellent, thank you. And then post-secondary education, SDSU or UCSD staff typically. Okay, Everett, I think that was the end.
All right, thank you, Josh. Thank you, everyone.
No worries.
Schedule says now, Tim, you're going to go down the CTAC, SANTEC list.
Yes, and for the members right now, Tim is going to go through the local agents list for both CTAC and SANTEC. So, but we have to record that you're presented either from CTAC or SANTEC. So just please be ready to state your name and the corresponding agency. Go ahead, Tim, please.
Yes, thank you so much. So we'll start with City of Carlsbad for CTAC. Okay, I don't see anyone.
We do have recorded. Somebody raised their hand. Sorry, apologize. Can you raise your hand again?
That's Ed Alberto with Carlsbad.
For
Um,
CTAC,
I don't, you have to be a member, actually a voting member listed, Ed.
Okay, yeah, I'm standing in for Nathan Schmidt.
Okay,
so yeah, as I said, for Carlsbad, we only have Tom Frank, Hossein, and John Kim on the roster. So we'll have to vote, record this as absence. City of Carlsbad for SANTAC.
I think I'm the only one in Carlsbad, so.
Got it. City of Chula Vista for CTAC.
Frank Rivera, and I didn't hear a motion made to.
I
approve.
apologize, correct.
I'll make the motion to approve as submitted. Rivera, Chula Vista, CTAC.
Second the motion, El Cajon, Mario Sanchez.
Thank you. Okay, so we'll restart again. So City of Carlsbad for CTAC. City of Carlsbad for SANTEC. City of Chula Vista for CTAC.
Rivera, aye.
Thank you. City of Chula Vista for SANTEC.
Paul Overbauer, City of Chula Vista, SANTEC approved.
Thank you. City of Coronado for CTAC.
Ed Walton for Coronado, approve.
Thank you. City of Coronado for SANTEC.
And Ed Walton as the alternate will approve him as well.
Thank you. City of Del Mar for CTAC. Seeing none. City of Del Mar for SANTEC. Absent. City of El Cajon for CTAC.
Yes, I approve Mario Sanchez for CTAC and SANTEC.
Thank you, Mario. City of Encinitas for CTAC.
Abe Bandigan, approve.
Thank you. City of Encinitas for SANTEC.
I can do both, right?
Yes,
Yes, Abe Bandigan, city traffic engineer, approve.
thank you. City of Escondido for CTAC.
Julie Procopio, abstain.
Thank you. City of Escondido for SANTEC.
Virpiku Karuotsalainen, SANTEC, abstain.
Thank you. City of Imperial Beach for CTAC.
Juan Larios, approve.
Thank you. City of Imperial Beach for SANTEC.
Steve Manganello, abstain.
Thank you. City of La Mesa for CTAC. Mike?
Yeah, City of La Mesa, Mike Kennard, SANTEC, and I abstain.
Okay, so for CTAC as well?
If I'm on the list, I'll abstain as well.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you. City of Lemon Grove. Let's see. City of National City. Absent. City of Oceanside for CTAC. City of Oceanside for SANTEC. Tiala, do you approve?
Yes, she approves. Her hand is raised.
City of Poway for CTAC.
Melody Rocco, approve.
Thank you, Molly. City of Poway for SANTEC.
Henry Train, approved.
Thank you. City of San Diego for CTAC.
Kerry Chui, I approve.
Thank you. City of San Diego for SANTEC.
Aaron Gardner, approve.
Thank you. City of San Marcos for CTAC.
Ketchamendi, approve.
Thank you. A sec. City of Santee for CTAC.
Minjime, I approve.
Thank you. City of Santee for SANTEC.
Minji again, I approve.
Thank you. City of Solana Beach for CTAC.
Dan Goldberg, I'll approve for both CTAC and SANTEC.
Thank you. City of Vista for CTAC.
I approve for both CTAC and SANTEC. And sorry, since I'm speaking, I have to sign off at 10:15 this morning, but Matt Atterbury from the City of Vista is in attendance this morning as well.
Okay, and it was Sam, right? Sam Hassanen?
Sam Hassanen, yes.
Approved. Okay, thank you. County of San Diego for CTAC.
Hey, Tim, I'm not sure if I'm supposed to vote on this or not. I'm just attending for Zubir. But if I need to vote, I'll abstain.
Doesn't look like we have you on the roster.
Yeah, I'm not even the alternate because both are out. So I think I'll just not vote.
Yeah, you would have to abstain at this point.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
NCTD for CTAC. NCTD for SANTEC. And MTS for SANTEC. MTS for CTAC. Beverly, I believe I saw you on the line.
Yeah, I see her in attendance, but I'm not sure if she, Beverly, can we note your vote, please?
I'm sitting in for Dennis. I honestly didn't review it, so.
You want to abstain?
Yeah.
Thank you.
So abstain. And finally, Caltrans for CTAC. Alvin.
Can we go to SANTEC, please?
We do have Rob on the line, but I'm not sure if.
No, he's not a voting member. Okay, I think we're good.
Chair, we have many meeting minutes and quorum, both yes, approval.
Great, thank you, Tim. Now going on to item number 3, public comment. So this is the opportunity for the members of the public to address the 3 committees on issues that are under our jurisdiction. So are there any members of the public who want to address us? Does staff see anybody?
Chair, I don't see any hands raised, or both in the members or attendees.
Okay, thank you, Alex. So with that, we'll move on to item number 4.
Thank you, Minji. Item number 4, ITALK goals for FY 2022. As most of you know, Transit Extension Program has established the Independent Taxpayer Oversight Committee to ensure the integrity and performance of the program. Today, we are lucky to have Sunny House, the new chair of the ITALK, to discuss the goals and objectives of their 2022 fiscal year. So Sunny, please take over.
Thank you, Mo. And thank you, everyone. Good morning. Thanks for allowing me to take a few minutes of your time to present the goals of ITALK for this year. I am currently serving as chair, and I also serve in the CEO position for ITALK. I have worked with many of you over the years and understand the challenges you all go through and to deliver your programs. So I wanted to share some of the goals that we have, the goals we have established this year to really try to improve ITALK and improve the work that we do and to enhance the delivery of Transnet. So what I like to do, actually the goals are listed on page 19 of your PDF package. What I'm going to do is I'll go through goals 2 through 4 first, and then I'll cover goal 1, which is the main reason I'm here, and then answer any questions that you may have. So goal number 2, as you may know, 2% of Transnet funds actually goes to bicycle, pedestrian, and neighborhood safety programs. And our 2021 triennial audit made certain recommendations to enhance SANDAG's regional safety planning efforts. They're listed in chapter 5. If you're interested in looking at it, they're actually online. And the safety of our communities is important to all of us. And as ITALK members, we wanted to make sure that these recommendations are implemented. So we will be working closely with SANDAG to make sure that we meet some of these metrics that we have established, and try to start developing a report on best practices and that other agencies use. Each city right now, or each agency actually has this own safety program, but we want to make sure SANDAG takes more leadership in this area as well. Goal number 3 is to look internally to the makeup of ITALK. The Transnet program was passed many, many years ago. Things have changed, and the way we deliver programs and the technology we use is different. We also are more aware of social equity. So we want to make sure that we have mechanisms in place to make ITALK more diverse in every aspect. So we will analyze and recommend certain ordinance amendments to improve the effectiveness of this committee and the makeup of the committee. And this is also really following the recommendations that were made in our triennial audit in chapter 7. Goal number 4 is, in addition to looking at the ITALC body, we want to look at other areas where ITALC can improve its effectiveness. Look at the way SANDAG is developing and performing. We want to make sure that we can really achieve a better impact, achieve better improved financial integrity and performance for the transit program. So any changes as a result of all of these efforts that we put together will be included in an amendment to the ordinance. And the timing of this is going to be hopefully in line with the timing of the amendment for the regional plan, which SANDAG intends to bring to the board. And we want to be able to kind of have a full comprehensive package for a, for the amendment. So that's the work we're going to focus on in addition to everything else we typically do in our meetings. And finally, goal number 1 is really to focus more on direct communication and collaboration with really all recipients of transit funds. So we can, as ITALC, can better understand the program you deliver and the challenges you may face, or even be able to celebrate your successes. Many times in our ITALC agenda, we have reports from SANDAG staff on behalf of the various recipients and agencies. But I really believe that direct communication and collaboration makes things a lot easier for us to understand and be able to help and support you all as you deliver your transit, share of your transit program. So I am personally inviting you on behalf of ITALC to come to our meetings, engage with us, respond to SANDAG staff as they invite you to come and speak to us. We want to do this maybe at least once a quarter to hear from a transit recipient, and there's many of you, so hopefully we can at least hear from some of you about really what you're doing and how things are going, and to be able to collaborate together more to deliver the transit program. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have. Tom has a question. Hi, Tom.
Hi, Sunny. Good to see you.
Thank you. Same here.
Yeah. Hey, I was wondering, and sorry, I had a conflicting meeting, so I just joined the meeting, so I didn't hear probably 90% of what you had said. But what's ITALC's role in providing recommendations for the draft plan that's in the EIR review process now? There's obviously a lot of comments which have been submitted to SANDAG, which they're working through regarding best use of tax dollars, and I'm sure you're aware of all the issues. So what's the committee's role in that?
So as ITALC members, we of course want to make sure that the intent of Transnet is being delivered, and there have been different amendments throughout the years. The approval of the amendment, any amendment to the ordinance, is really the authority of the board of SANDAG. But many times the programs, the changes are always presented to ITALC to make sure we review and whether we support or we don't. That's our role. We don't approve the amendment, but we can lend our support if we agree and think that this is in the best interest of the program, or we basically can say, no, we're not on board with that. And SANDAG typically has been good about taking our comments and working with staff. We've already had some presentations on the regional plan changes, and we are expected to have another round, when the program, when things are finalized. And I know Ariana is here. Ariana, I don't know if you want to add anything else to that.
Yeah, Hi, good morning, CTAC members, Chair House. Yeah, no, I think you answered that perfectly. And there is another opportunity for the ITAC to review the regional plan comments received to your question, Tom. That's happening on November 10th. So they will be seeing a presentation on those comments received as they relate to Transnet. And then as Chair House mentioned, any related ordinance amendments to true up the ordinance with the regional plan as is required explicitly in the ordinance would come in early fiscal year 22 for not only ITAC, but other committees and the board, of course, their consideration as well. So.
And Tom, this is the reason I'm inviting people to come and talk to us. We don't see all of the comments unless we go through and actually, review all the documents. But if there are concerns or issues, it would be nice to hear from the recipients of these funds. So.
Yeah, great. Well, I appreciate that offer and opportunity, and we'll likely take you up on that. And for SANDAG, I really appreciate all of the work and thought that's put into the 5 big moves. I'm sure many of you have reviewed our general plan and mobility element. We're one of the cities that have a really progressive mobility element. And with that, we've adopted progressive guidelines through our sustainable mobility plan, and we're updating our standards. So we appreciate you moving in this direction. It's a big ask, as you know, and we've had some significant comments regarding the process and particular elements of it, mainly the transit leap and putting forward a high-speed new rail alignments and putting all of those tax dollars into a high-speed rail system based on the modeling predictions that we're going to get a lot of people out of their cars, their single driver vehicle trips, and onto transit. And a lot of those assumptions were based on 2015-16 era surveys that were done to make those assumptions. And that was all before I think we even saw the trends of transit. And then of course, the trends of transit lately are horrible. And the ridership's at 50% levels of pre-COVID. So that's where there's some big questions, and we've made some suggestions on possibly refining the program to just make sure that the tax dollars are getting the biggest bang for their buck. So it's been I know SANDAG staff has had a tremendous ask to try and get this plan delivered in the time frame that's necessary. As staff has mentioned, hopefully there's opportunity to make some fine tweaks and get a plan that a lot of agencies can get behind. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Alex, you're on.
Sorry, I apologize. I don't see any of the raised hands or any comments.
Okay, well, thank you everyone again for your time, and I really look forward to seeing you at our meetings and hearing from you about these different types of issues. So thanks again.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Sonia. I appreciate your participation and help on our agenda. I just like as Tom mentioned, I really welcome everything you mentioned, especially your goal number 1. For most of us, our encounter with ITAC has always been when you are called into the principal's office. Exactly. Whereas we feel that we are in the same team, and your offer of working together is always welcome. My only comment and question is, as Tom mentioned, there might be some more interest in coming to your meetings. How do you want us to work that? Do you want us to go through Alex or contact you directly?
Well, Ariana handles our meeting agenda. Ariana, do you want to respond how it's best to handle that?
Yeah, I think if if it's easiest for the members to reach out to Alex or CC me as well. Either way, I know Alex will make sure that I get the message, and then we can coordinate with each of you and find a meeting date that works and support you as we get your item on the agenda. That'd be great.
The other thing I'm trying to do, Mo, is to have a better calendar for the year, so we know what the topics are. That calendar typically will be attached to our meeting packet, so you can see the different topics coming up. Now, of course, that's a ever-changing agenda topic, you know, because of the needs and the priorities, but that kind of gives you an idea as well. And you hit it on the nail. I don't want this to be coming to the principal's office and we're going to scold you over what you did wrong. I want to hear about your successes. I want to hear about your concerns and challenges. You are a big part of Transnet. All of the agencies receive these funds, but you're a silent partner for ITALK, as far as ITALK is concerned. So I wanted to change that. And I think direct collaboration gives us a better understanding of the overall picture and how we can be most effective. And the fact that we're going to hopefully continue to have hybrid meetings. It means even if we go in person, we don't expect everybody to drive all the way down to downtown San Diego necessarily. Hopefully we can accommodate schedules and people to be able to do either virtual or be there in person, but have more flexibility. But that's really, let's work as a team and make sure we understand what needs to be done and how to make these decisions more, more informed. So that's the idea.
Very good. And we really welcome that. Thank you very much. And I appreciate your time for today's meeting.
Thank you.
Have a nice day. All right, Alex, are we ready for the next item?
Yeah, we actually have a change in the agenda. We have a hard stop for Antoinette and part of this item. So we did ask Robin Owens for the Caltrans to switch those two items. So we'll turn it over to Antoinette, start the discussion on item number 6.
Thank you, Alex, and thank you, Caltrans, for accommodating the shift. I'm giving a presentation to our social equity working group, which unfortunately is scheduled at the same time as CTAC SANTEC. So we hope to address that so we don't have the conflicts moving forward, because many of us are active in both of those groups. So great to be here and to see so many folks. Many of you I haven't seen in a long time. We've had multiple conversations with CTAC, SANTEC over the last 18 months really about working group restructuring. And we've taken a lot of input from folks and we've come up with some recommendations for consolidating and restructuring our transportation working groups. And we wanted to have a discussion about those recommendations today. But first, I wanted to just take a step back and talk about how we got to this point.
And Antoinette, bear with me. Are we bringing up the presentation, Tim? Thank you.
Everyone see the presentation now? All right. Okay, great. So we wanted to just take a step back and remind everyone how we got to this point. So back in 2019, pre-pandemic, SANDAG developed an organizational effectiveness plan. And this was really intended to guide restructuring of the organization and improve performance of the agency. And the focus was on really 3 areas. It was organizational culture, structure, and operations. And one of the recommendations that came out of this effort was the need to take a fresh look at all of the SANDAG working groups and identify opportunities for consolidating and restructuring to really align the working groups with agency priorities and provide more meaningful opportunities for all of you to participate in projects and provide input. So for just a little bit of context, there are more than 25 working groups in the agency, and all of these working groups were stood up initially for a very specific purpose. But as projects and priorities changed over the years, the working groups didn't. Charters weren't updated, and many of the working groups aren't serving the same purpose that they were intended to when they were stood up. And what we've done is we've tended to then just add new groups instead of revamping what we have. And so that's brought us to 25 working groups in the agency, many of which are really struggling. So we discovered that each of these working groups requires 30 to 40 staff hours. So there's just a tremendous amount of resources going into managing so many of these working groups. And like I said, many of the working groups are really struggling with attendance and quorum and engagement. So that was really the intent behind this. And this is not just a restructuring of CTAC, SANTEC transportation working groups. We're looking at all of our working groups. So in order to come back with recommendations that make sense, for the last 18 months, we've been going through a really comprehensive process to analyze our working groups. This is an agency-wide effort. So, we've been looking at the planning working groups, environmental working groups, and transportation working groups. And we've had conversations with all of you to really understand what's working well, what's not working well. We did some focus groups last year. We've had multiple conversations during committee meetings, and we also have done some research. We've looked at peer agencies from across the nation to see how they're handling their working groups. So today, we want to share and talk about our recommendations for consolidation and restructuring. We happen to be a little further along with this process than our planning working groups, but ultimately the agency committed to bring back restructuring recommendations to our executive committee by the end of this year so that we can begin the new year, 2022, implementing this new structure. We will have a new regional plan in January, and we want to really structure the organization to be able to make good progress on implementing the plan. So next slide, please. Thanks. So before I jump into the recommendations, I want to quickly remind everyone what we identified as some of those key issues that really needed to be addressed through this process. So first and foremost, many working group charters, including CTAC and SANTEC, are outdated, and they don't reflect what the groups are currently doing. We also heard that there's really been a lack of substantive items for discussion and input. And as a result, we don't get adequate attendance. Meetings get canceled frequently because there isn't quorum. Engagement in meetings has been waning. So we're not having really great, meaningful dialogues and conversation and participation. Membership is siloed. So we've got, working groups that are set up by profession, by specific industries. So a group of traffic engineers, a group of public works directors, a group of planning directors, and we don't plan for transportation in silos like that. So we need more diverse membership to provide those different perspectives and really have a multidisciplinary discussion. And then to address this issue, what we often do is consolidate working groups. We do joint sessions, we do joint workshops to bring everybody together like we're doing today. Or we form ad hoc groups to bring together a wider mix of stakeholders to support specific projects. Like recently we formed the Digital Divide Task Force as an example. What we'd really like to minimize is this creation of new groups all of the time. To get those representatives at the table, we want to make sure that our working groups are more inclusive. Then we've got overlapping membership between some of our working groups and redundant agenda items. So folks have to come to multiple working groups and hear the same agenda items over and over again. Oftentimes these are informational items, and we've heard we want to have more discussion, we want to have more engagement. And then last but not least, we've heard that the formal structure of the meetings is really limiting. I mean, we took 30 minutes this morning to have to go around and do the attendance and the quorum. And that's a lot of time to have to spend on those technicalities. And we've heard from you that you want more opportunity for peer exchange and educational forums. So those were some of the key challenges that we've sought to address with restructuring. In terms of, next slide, please, thank you. In terms of the peer agency research, we looked at 27 agencies around the nation, and then we did follow-up interviews with 7. And some of the key findings was, other agencies are offering that opportunity for information exchange. They have more collaboration and coordination, educational forums. They have outside organizations come in and present, and that less formal structure generally leads to more active participation. Open and diverse membership was something else that we saw, and this transition from being transportation focused to being more focused on mobility generally. So multiple modes, access, equity, different topics beyond just the infrastructure itself. And then really giving the working groups meaningful projects to dig into and to work on has led to greater engagement. So not just, checking the box by presenting on a project to the working group, but actually having them more involved is a model that is working better for other agencies. So next slide, please. So I'm going to hand it over to Alex to kind of talk through the specific details of the proposed new charter. But we're proposing to bring together the various transportation working groups into what we call a mobility working group. We have a new charter that proposes more multidisciplinary membership and a wider range of topics. We are considering a reduced frequency for business meetings so that we can provide more opportunities for that information exchange and learning throughout the year. And then annual work plans. So Sonia mentioned ITAC is having these work plans. We think it would be a good idea to do the same thing for the mobility working group to provide a little bit more focus and understanding on what we'll be working on. And so we've put together a work plan for 2022. And then, we may need at times more active engagement from specific folks, member agencies, and project planning and development. So the mobility working group is obviously not the only opportunity. We want to, encourage the formation of those temporary task forces or ad hoc groups as needed when we really need to take a deep dive into a specific project and have specific subject matter expertise on that project. So with that, Alex, I'm going to hand it over to you to jump into the charter and the annual work plan and a discussion.
Thank you, Antoinette. So what I'd like to do is just point you to the agenda item attachments number 6, which kind of introduces the work plan and also, but before that is the proposed charter for this working group. I'm just going to highlight a couple key elements and key takeaways but really kind of lay the foundation based on a lot of the context that Antoinette provided. But the idea here is high level, very, very high level. As Antoinette alluded, we went and took the input that you guys provided to us with the intent of still having that valuable input and feedback, but make it more relatable, more tangential, but also make sure that we are providing value as a two-way street. So this is why we came up with this charter. So if I could just point you to that, if you have it, we obviously don't have it in the presentation, but if you refer to it into your electronic agenda item. But pretty much the key takeaway for the charter as conveyed in the purpose is that this group will include participation from all of you and among other transportation mobility peers, but would serve as a coordinating and body for critical resource too. And this is key to apply essentially your leadership role and really the input that you provide to your local agencies or departments to promote cross-agency coordination to help us address policy, planning, development, implementation of the SANDAG regional plan. So this whole concept of you guys, all the working groups, whether CTAC and SANTEC or the active transportation, where you still continue to provide that critical input on these subject matters. So really to characterize, as Antoinette mentioned earlier, really kind of, these working groups have played a critical role in past initiatives, past RTPs, but really there's a shift in philosophy. We got to think about being more inclusive. Think about the fact that it doesn't take only the transportation folks or engineering that is involved in implementing a project. So that's why we really wanted to essentially undertake this restructuring. And in some instances, we also, I remember being part of CTAC and SANTEC, that even those working groups served as models for the region, but through this restructured, we actually want to serve as another model as transportation really is expanding to be more exclusive of all the mobility components in terms of what it takes to implement a project. So as we proceed forward with these working group structure, as laid out in the chart, there's primary focus areas in the middle of the charter to bring your attention to. We want to work together to collaborate, coordinate research and peer exchange, innovation, mobility solutions. And this is really one thing that lacked in the past because of procedural elements as a working group. Sometimes we were bound by only project related sort of discussion items, but the idea here is that it gives us that opportunity but also identify legislative and regulatory barriers and opportunities. And again, the idea here is that we want to use your expertise, your leadership roles to give us a value to that, because there's going to be a lot of things that may be coming out of the regional plan once approved, once the programs are identified. So we want to tap into your expertise. And also on the implementation side, we want to work with you to help us implement and operate regional solutions that essentially will require cross-jurisdictional coordination. Thank you, Tim. And then fourth, we also want to, with your input, there's a lot of unknowns, but there's some unknowns in terms of just facilitate the implementation of mobility programs. So for those that are unknowns, we want to make sure that, because we are being inclusive and expanding to all mobility transportation officials, that we come together to really help us develop standards or guidelines, but also promote best practices and technical assistance as we move toward the implementation of those mobility solutions. So really the idea here is, one way to think about it is that this working group will serve as the forum for SANDAG to discuss, deliberate, learn from each other, collaborate and validate, and really refine input on these areas, again, to provide input to SANDAG staff and our policy advisor committees and our board of directors during that decision-making process. But in terms of memberships, again, we're looking to advance and reflect various diverse levels of mobility issues. And thus, we are proposing that this working group structure and its topics accommodate, and it's looking inclusive and also well-rounded various mobility disciplines to appropriately represent the mobility. Again, we're looking at this point, as included the charter, our member agencies, but also the idea here is that the member agencies could delegate, to transportation planning, mobility, public works, engineering, smart cities, clean transportation, technology, and other innovative areas within the departments. And we are looking to be more inclusive, again, as Antoinette included, but again, we're looking for folks that have that relevant experience to help the team here guide the implementation of those subject areas. In terms of really kind of the meeting frequency, the idea here, as Antoinette mentioned, we want to make sure that the meeting frequency is valuable. So we're proposing at least every other month or as needed. And then the duration is pretty much as an ongoing basis. I believe if you can go to the next slide, please, Tim. And this is part of the idea behind what Antoinette alluded to, along with the charter. The idea here is to have more structure and have a better concept in terms of what we'll be addressing through this working group. Since this effort, frankly, is really groundbreaking and likely will be carried out over the several months, and also to provide some initial structure of this working group. We envision really the development and carrying out these activities through this work plan on an annual basis. And what you're seeing here is just one component of the annual work plan. But if you could turn to the attachment again. Sorry, I think there's a delay. But the work plan in itself, there's some initial activities that staff would work through this annual work plan. And the idea here is that we would work with this working group and identify those work areas, and then work with the working group in identifying the appropriate time to bring those working areas. What you see here on the slide is really all the elements included in the umbrella sort of this working group. But the idea here is that, and point out is that, as Antoinette alluded earlier, the key takeaway is that the level of discussions and relevance to all these items, and based on the charter, will range from providing policy input down to the technical level input. And now let me just highlight one of them. For example, the first one, which you see here, the advanced NextOS through system engineering process, including which is the advancement of the NextOS projects. There's a number of documents that we're currently working with some of the agencies in development concept of operations or system engineering, and that would likely be more at the technical level. But if there's a discussion associated with sort of operational philosophies or guidance on cross coordination, then that will probably be more at the management or policy level. And we also have other elements like supporting the Transnet Local Streets and Road Program, which has been kind of a core element of this existing CTAC. And that's been at the CTAC level, but I'm sure as we proceed forward, some of the recommendations that Chair House mentioned in implementing some of those transit audit may require some technical input from all of you. But again, it's not related to roadway specific, but it could be mobility specific as well. And then we also have the implementation of the regional digital equity strategy that Antoinette and our team here is Mobility on Partnerships is leading. So again, it could be input at the policy or program level, but at the same time, it may require input at the technical level at some time. And then finally, if you could just another example of sort of the discussion, what happened occur at these working groups. If you go to the next slide, which kind of convened the educational and peer exchange forums. And again, this is one of the things that we heard from all of you and really were bound by procedural, where the items that we were presented were really bound by procedural elements. So if an item we wanted to bring an item, it had to be sponsored by a local agency or SANDAG. But as we know, technology, but also mobility is changing. And the idea here is we will have a venue to bring topics more frequently or more precise in terms of providing the quality input that we actually are seeking. Again, either you're seeking on for your local agency, but also for SANDAG, but also ranging from lessons learned and share best practices to down maybe to issues associated with workforce development, or even the idea of best practices for contracting and procurement. I believe that is the last slide. So the next steps, and we'll open it for brief questions here, but the next step is just to, as Antoinette alluded, bring the charter to our management team and our policy committee team and start the execution of the transitioning for this restructuring. Antoinette, did I miss anything before we open up to comments? I know you have to skip out at 10.
No, I think the next step though is it's the executive committee actually that the recommendation goes to. So that would happen in December.
With that, we'll open it for any questions or discussion items. I see a hand raised. Minji.
Yes, hi. First of all, yeah, this is an ongoing effort that has started about 2 years ago. I think it's in the fall of 2019. So I do want to say thank you to SANDAG staff for working.
Benji, we're having a hard time hearing you. You're breaking up a little bit.
Okay, I'm sitting a little closer. Yeah, I want to thank the staff for working on this effort and to carry forward this item until today. I'm not sure if all of you have read the proposed charter, and I read it, and I also compared to the existing charter. I need to share my feeling. I guess on top of my head, I could be wrong, but I wanted to share it, because hopefully you understand where I came from. And I guess technically on the charter part, I guess this is a draft, right? So I think I like to see it as a charter that we have today. Say maybe first the purpose and the goal of the group, membership, and then so forth. I think this one not very clear to me. What exactly is the goal of the purpose of the group? But one part that kind of stands out to me is that, for example, if you look at the CTAC charter today, the charter, the one main purpose of the group is to advise SANDAG committee or maybe a transportation committee and the board on programs, projects, and policies. And from the proposed items that we are supposed to working on, it seems to me there's a major shift away from programs and policy, but a more emphasis on projects. And I feel like would be more serving as like a panel of experts, like a technical experts in a sense. Not sure that's how I feel. And seems to me, I think I don't still want to emphasize the part that I think still like to play a role of providing input on regional issues, projects and policies and programs. I think that's important. It seems to me. The structure, yes, I do see that there's a lot of redundancy in today's structures, and we want to address that. But I think maybe we are shifting away too much from that part. So that's my biggest impression, and I do see that say the combination maybe of CTAC and SANTEC. I think that makes a lot of sense. There's a lot of redundancy today, but maybe I'm not sure about the active transportation group. I think they're more specialized. For example, for most cities, the people who work on the active transportation projects typically don't they're not the people who work. They're kind of specialized in that field. So I feel like I don't know what kind of what you have in mind for the membership structure in the future. So that's one thing I can make. I'm not sure that will blend well here, in my opinion. But my biggest impressions, seems like I think we're shifting away from what we used to do, maybe a little too much. I think from a member agency's point of view, we like to have the opportunity to express our ideas and opinions on regional policies and programs. Okay, that's so for me for now. Thank you.
So if I may, real quick, I think Minji, you still have the ability to provide that, but maybe the distinction here, to make it clear to the rest of the team here in the charter, the reasoning behind being so specific in past CTAC and SANTEC charter, because ideally the idea there and the context there is really those were the working groups to help implement and advise on really the Transnet Local Streets and Road Program. So that's why maybe there's more specific focus on projects at that point, but also we'll like to highlight that the intent is not to limit the opportunity to provide that more project level and detail level. The idea there is, and that's why we included the work plan, because ideally, if you look through the work plan, it could be that at some point through a task force, we will be looking for more detailed project related input, Minji. So we do provide that venue. And then again,
that's what I'm saying. That's my right. Thanks. That's my impression. Just reading the charter, the draft charter as it is now, because I'm thinking, if you add a more defined purpose, goals and purpose for that charter, maybe that'll be better clarified that part.
And we could take a look at it, Minji, but essentially what we define as a project, it starts with policy, planning, and really what you spoke to is the development or deployment. So we're just saying, hey, let's take a broader spectrum through this working group.
And just to add to that, Minji, the reason for the annual work plans being more focused on projects is because if we incorporate that into the charter, we're going to constantly have to be amending the charter as projects change and as priorities change for the agency. So keeping the charter more general and acknowledging that this group is established to provide a regional forum and input on policy and plans and programs and implementation of projects, generally, and then having those specific annual work plans keeps us from having to be able to honestly go back and amend the charter all the time when there are changes. If we call out specific projects, those projects are going to change over time. Do we want to continually have to amend the charter? No.
No, that's maybe I didn't express myself clearly. Right. That's my impression. It seems like the charter as it is written today is more focused on specific projects than the more general program and policy part.
Yeah, we wanted the charter to just say the purpose of this group is to help inform the policies, the plans, and the programs, and those specific projects will be detailed out in the annual work plan. So.
Yeah, great comment, Minji. Thank you. We also have other hands raised, so I'm just going to go down the list. I apologize, I don't know who raised their hands, but I'll just go with Kristen Schindler. Can you tell us, and also who do you represent, Kristen? Thank you.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm really kind of a community member and a witness to this process. So I'm an occasional attendee for this particular group, and then more engaged with the active transportation working group. And I put something in the chat, and this may just not be appropriate to even ask, but it kind of may jog a conversation. Everyone else can speak better to this change, what's being proposed. To me, it sounds like a good idea. But when I first got involved in SANDAG meetings, there was more conversation and more engagement with public health. And I come from a public health, climate action, active transportation, mobility, transit, community connection focus. And I wondered where public health fits now in the working groups. So that's kind of my first and most important question. Thank you.
Thank you for the comment. Again, we would like to proceed with member comments on this item, please. Anybody else? Sam, I see your hand.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to say, I think this is a positive change, having been involved in SANDAG meetings for many, many years now, starting with the Bike and Pedestrian Advisory Committee, BPAC, way back in the day, and then now SANTEC and ATWG. And I think, things have evolved over the years where now we all know transportation is integrated, it's not isolated. And I think it's a great step to combine the three groups so that everybody hears everything at the same time. And we were discussing the same items anyway at the different meetings. And then, agencies can have their representatives from different, disciplines and agencies at the same meeting, and they all hear the same thing and give kind of input, and then they're all on the same page. So I really think this is a great step. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sam. Julie.
Hi, Alex. Thanks so much, Antoinette. I appreciate your presentation, and I love that you've included a work plan. I think that that's something that has certainly been missed in our activities, but I agree with Minji. I think that what's missing here is that CTAC is an advisory agency or an advisory group, a committee that advises the transportation committee. And so I think it's important that we continue to be able to have that advisory body at the committee level to be able to make sure that our elected officials are hearing from their transportation directors. So I think making this a working group, while I understand the desire to make it more flexible, I think that what happens is that we lose the ability to provide that advice to our elected officials who are not transportation professionals, who really rely on CTAC to say, yes, we've looked at this and we recommend support for this item. And so I think that's really what's missing here. I love, the work plan focus. I believe that the active transportation working group would be a fantastic working group that can report to CTAC and provide us with the information and guidance that we need. And other working groups might also need to be created that are more ad hoc, like you've talked about, Alex, in the past, that we might have a working group specifically for the next operating system. And so I think that flexibility is great, but I'm concerned about eliminating that advisory capacity to our elected officials because I believe that they rely on that. And then one other item is just that the grant programs and the scoring criteria. I know that CTAC has always spent a lot of time kind of debating, what should and shouldn't be included and trying to help make sure that those grant programs are fair to all. And so I think that we would want to be sure that it continues to be a part of the advising on the programs that move forward.
Thank you, Julie. I think the idea here is just trying to come up with a balanced approach where we would continue provide that flexibility, Julie, and also at the same time continue to provide that level of input.
Julie, the intent's not to take that away. We want to do more of bringing projects through this group and getting your input and being able to take your input to the policy advisory committee meetings and the board when we're presenting. So the intent is not to restrict your ability to play an advisory role.
I just think that you lose when you kind of make it a working group instead of a committee that's, you know, officially, you know, controlled, and the, you know, the recommendations, you know, we vote on those recommendations. And I love the work plan idea, because I can see that, you know, CTAC could take a really active role in sort of guiding that work plan and talking about how we create working groups to ensure that we're pushing forward. And, you know, a less frequent meeting schedule for CTAC makes a lot of sense, every other month or quarterly, so that we're really focused on, hey, you know, we want to look at the overall transportation and mobility issues for the region and guide that. And then, you know, we can fill in those other weeks with, hey, I'm going to participate on this working group, and somebody else with another expertise will participate on another working group. I think that that's how you avoid the duplication. But I do think that you need that umbrella of CTAC to provide that advisory agency. And one of the other things I noticed in the charter is that the focus is limited to implementation of the regional plan. I think we should be looking at our entire region and mobility issues throughout, and not just limit it to just the regional plan. There might be things out there that come along. And so I think that might be part of what Minji was thinking, is that it looks like you're just focused on this one thing, but we really don't want to limit ourselves. We'd like to focus on everything related to mobility in the region.
Oh, that's correct. And look at the plan as a draft plan, and we just highlighted some key elements in the draft plan. But again, going back to the restructure and sort of the structure for this, Julie, is that because it's done in such a way, we would be able to have and expand on some of the subjects to include whatever everybody's doing at the local level. Where in the past we would be strict to, again, it's a sponsored project, but that's what the opportunity exists through this restructure. But we could definitely revise the work plans as we bring it to the working groups and include, you know, input from the locals. Moving on, Thomas, you have your raised hand also as well.
Yes, I do. Thank you. And yeah, I support Julie's comments as well. And I just wanted a clarification. Is this mobility working group, is this a consolidation of CTAC, SANTEC, and the active transportation? Okay, so it's a consolidation. And again, Antoinette, I do appreciate actually the working plan. That's awesome. And the consolidation effort. I would like to actually hear from our SANTEC members if they feel like there's something that would be lost by this consolidation. So that's one concern. In regards to Julie's comments, they're pretty spot on in my opinion. And if it is a consolidation, then then it's really a question of, you know, what do we name this committee or working group? And maybe we could call it a CMAC, you know, County City Mobility Action Committee. So that's something we consider. If it's just a name and it would kind of serve the purpose of this committee or working group, whatever we want to call it, we're still an advisory committee to the transportation group. So maybe that's something to consider. And then, yeah, I'd like to just follow up with some of the members of SANTEC to see if they have some concerns about any items that was on their unofficial work plan or that used to be on their agenda that may be lost by this consolidation.
I don't know that we should consider it a consolidation exactly, Thomas. It's a new work group. So it could be members of SANTEC and Active Transportation continue to participate, but we're opening up the membership to others. So it's not like we're just bringing the three groups together and you're just meeting together now moving forward. It's essentially a new work group. The consolidation is that we're looking across the agency at all of the work groups, all 25, and coming up with a more manageable working group structure. So,
what I'm saying in the work plan,
yeah.
in the work plan, it's going to be one representative from each agency, right? And probably a delegate.
That's what we're providing some more flexibility on. We're allowing for multiple representatives from the agency.
So would CTAC still exist? Would we still have CTAC meetings?
It will not.
Okay, so it's a consolidation then. So
well, consolidation implies that you have the same three groups coming together. So membership from the same three groups coming together. And we're saying it could be, but there could be other staff from cities participating in this working group.
No, I understand that, but in the end, it's going to be consolidation with a smaller number of participants. So
we're not limiting the size. That's the point. We're not limiting the size of the working group. Right now, we've got active mobility, or sorry, CTAC and SANTEC all together in this particular meeting. And maybe that's what we have moving forward. It's the same members from these three groups, but maybe city staff from other departments are participating as well. So we're not saying that it's limited to specific staff at the city.
Okay, so before the CTAC was typically the directors of public works or transportation director or city engineers. Now we're opening it up and we're calling it a mobility working group. What's the, I guess the downside to calling it a CMAC? We can still open up the membership. So I guess I'm just not hearing what the negative would be to keep it a committee and versus a working group.
So Tom, some of the initial input and feedback that we received early on is that we wanted to make the value provided by existing CTAC and SANTEC greater flexibility on the items to be discussed. So that's one input. Based on the current structure is that even the roles or the items that we've been discussed were outdated. And as Antonio alluded at the beginning, they're mainly informational. So there is not a sort of initiatives, over the last really 5 years because of the Transnet program. It's been pretty much coming in, checking in, this is what we're doing. So that's the really intent, provide the greatest flexibility, and that's why we are proposing to structure it as such. But also at the same time, be in alignment with sort of the regional goals. But I agree that if there's an alignment with local initiatives, absolutely bring them on. But what we're saying is that we have to be more inclusive with not just the traditional, engineering, but also look at smart cities, for example, or more in line with technology on the active transportation as well. So a lot of the elements that we just didn't have the flexibility because of procedural elements.
Well, I get that, Alex, but my point is we can keep the same work plan, we can keep the same charter and add to it, but we can basically call it a CMAC, a mobility committee, and not the transportation committee, and we can revise the charter or the bylaws however we want. It could be the same thing. If, to Julie's point, if we want to still keep an advisory committee to the transportation committee, then we can do that. So again, my point was, I don't see the negative to calling it a CMAC versus a mobility working group. And I'd like to hear Julie's comments.
So I guess I just had more of a question. So I'm hearing that the working group would just be open to whomever wanted to attend, as many or as few. So we don't necessarily end up with voting delegates, one from each agency. We end up with a group of people, whoever decides to show up gets to, give the advice of the transportation, region, advice to our transportation committee?
We want to let the cities make decisions about who can participate. So there's a lot of different staff and cities now working on transportation. Some cities it hasn't changed as much, but in others, like the city of San Diego, for example, they have a mobility department now. We don't have a place for the mobility staff to participate in our current working group structure, current advisory groups. So the idea is that we have put together this work plan. These are the types of projects, and we want to work with cities to identify the best representatives to participate in the working group. Occasionally, a city might want to have more than one staff member participate because they have a subject matter expert who would really benefit from being a part of that conversation.
So I think that the way that our meetings have worked is that people have frequently brought experts if there's a specific topic and they have an interest. And so the meetings are open to everyone, right? But our voting delegates are one from each city to ensure that, there's equal representation and that the final advisory decision made to the transportation committee is something that, represents the region and isn't heavy based on meeting attendance. So I think that's something that I would like to see changed or maybe clarified, is just the voting membership would be, one from each city, and the other agencies that we've typically had involved. I think that would help it would help to make me feel more comfortable that we're representing everyone. Was that the intent, or was the intent that would there be votes, or how would it be the same or different?
No, the intent was that there would not be votes.
Okay, so
So then it wouldn't be an advisory committee to the Transportation Executive Committee.
Yeah.
Right? It's a working group. So that's the big change. So I get the consolidation, I get the work plan, I fully support it. Like Julie said many times in CTAC, there would be multiple people from agencies to listen and learn and participate in the conversation. But at the end of the day, when there were recommendations to the Transportation Executive Committee, we would vote on them, and that served the purpose of the advisory committee. So we would be losing that, I guess, and it would be different, right? So you'd I guess maybe you could explain more. You take minutes to these meetings, and then you would provide a staff report to the different board of director committees, and so there wouldn't be that formal advisory committee any longer. So I guess I'd like probably some time to think about that and think through what the ramifications are.
Well, thank you. I think, but currently this is what we're proposing, but if you guys have any other questions for all the members, please send them our way. Please, you could send them to me and I'll copy Antoinette, but this is what we're proposing moving forward. Again.
So how does this work if this CTAC meeting, are we going to make a motion on this and vote on it, or what's the process?
A discussion item today, so it's not a voting item.
So go ahead, Mo, sorry.
Sorry about that, Julie. I'd like to hear what you have to say as well. I understand all the comments and the issues, and I have to admit that I did not pay too much attention on the original intent of the formation of the CTAC. I welcome the idea of a consolidation effort, but at the same time, I think we should maintain our advisory role as our original, I guess, charter or formation. So in that regard, in the preparation for this meeting, we had a very short conversation. And Alex, you mentioned that the SANDAG leadership is in support of this change, this arrangement. I would like to have, here's what I'm proposing, based on what I'm hearing today, and as a chair of this committee, I'm proposing that we should have one specific meeting with CTAC and invite either SANDAG's attorney or some of the leaders to come and talk to us and let us know what will be our role in this new formation, in this new organization, and then to make us feel comfortable about how we're going to move forward in the future. I think I'm only asking for one meeting with that arrangement, and maybe Alex, you and I can figure out a method by which we can actually take a vote and figure out what the membership really feels about it. I know some of us are doing a lot of thinking, but maybe not wanting to talk about it at this point. But that would be a good forum for us to express our opinion. How do you feel about that, Alex? Would you be open to that idea?
I think if we want to have more deliberations that we're proposing, I'm happy to do that, but we would have to think about it internally, because we did, as Antoinette mentioned early on, she did make a presentation. So we did advise our committee that we were going through this whole extensive effort agency-wide on trying to figure out how to restructure the existing working groups. So let me just circle back, see how much time we have, but also at the same time, what that flexibility is, Mo.
Alex, I mean, we can bring this up again at the next meeting next month.
What I was getting at is, and again, I'd like to hear Julie's comment too. What I was getting at is, I am recommending to have one more CTAC alone meeting. I mean, it's not going to be a closed meeting. Obviously, we're going to have everybody participate. But at that meeting, I'd like to hear from SANDAG's leadership and perhaps attorneys to express and explain the role of this, the role of CTAC as it exists today in the new organization, and then open it up for a vote and figure out what the membership feels about this new organization. I think it's a democratic way of dealing with this. I was the first one who acknowledged this change. I'm embracing it. I think it's a great idea. There's a lot of efficiency to be made, and all of those things are great ideas. The work plan, annual work plan, is a fantastic idea. All I'm concerned about, as a chair, is I feel a little bit of a reluctance in the membership for a good reason. And I think we should allow the rest of the members to express their opinion and perhaps open it up for a vote. Again, that's just a recommendation. And Julie, you were going to say something. I cut you off. Sorry about that.
I think maybe, Mo, if the idea is to bring it back for further discussion at the future meeting, I think we're fine with that. I think I was asking just for flexibility, because I'm not sure who we could bring to the discussion at the future meeting. I don't even know if we need legal, so just give us that opportunity, but we could definitely bring back the discussion, Mo.
Okay, that makes sense.
Okay.
I just wanted to add that when you bring it back, if you could focus in your report on how the discussions and information would be gathered into the meeting minutes, and then how it would be distributed to the SANDAG Board of Directors for the different committees. Because I think that's where, again, I supported Julie's comments, and I think that's where we just want to understand how the process would work to make sure that the information is adequately getting to the Board of Directors.
Okay, Tom.
Good idea, Tom.
Thank you. Great. Are we ready to move on to the next item, Alex?
Yes, we are.
Perfect. Thank you. I don't know, Everett, is that what you want to take?
That is me. So we are skipping the Caltrans updates. We think we got that in the chat. So we're going to move to item number 7, the Regional Bikeway Program update with Chris Kluth.
Thanks, Everett. Tim, I put the PowerPoint in the folder. Do you, in the CTAC PowerPoint folder for today? Do you want to run the PowerPoint, or I can try screen share?
Sure thing. I'll pull up in a second.
Great, thanks. And we're running, not really short of time, but probably going to do a kind of a condensed version of the PowerPoint. So I'm going to jump into it while Tim gets that going. So this item is to bring folks up to speed on kind of the status of our regional bikeway program, the program future, and our budget amendments that we got, and some potential project reprioritization effort that we're starting up here. So really, most importantly, in this discussion is how we're going to consider the future of the bike program. You can go to the next slide, please. Go to slide 2. And we know project costs have increased over time, over what our original estimates were back in 2013. And we know that to complete the EAP and deliver the transportation and economic and social equity benefits that these projects give to the region, we're going to need additional funding. And so we have a short-term strategy, a long-term strategy, and I'm going to go into those a little bit more as we go on. And so and then the long-term strategy importantly includes potential framework for our transit board amendments. Sunny had mentioned that concept earlier, where SANDAG is putting together kind of a whole package of potential amendments to Transnet to kind of bring things more up to speed and more up to date with what the world is like today. And so we're bringing some of these ideas through our policy committees, and really, one of the main things is bringing the goals of the EAP, kind of updating that and making it more explicit, and bringing those goals in line with what we're doing with the regional plan. And one of those things that we'll touch on, is really strengthening our commitment to social equity and advancing timelines on projects and investments in historically underserved communities. So next slide, please. So a lot of you know kind of the history of the bike program, and the EAP was an effort, or it started back in 2013. Our board of directors committed $200 million to these projects. This is the 30th highest priority projects from the bike plan, and then the 4 kind of bigger class 1 projects that SANDAG and some of the other local agencies have been working on many years. That includes the Inland Rail Trail, Coastal Rail Trail, San Diego River Trail, and the Bayshore Bikeway. Next slide. So we're about, we are 8 years into it, completed 14 miles, and we have 11 miles under construction right now that we're getting ready to open over the next couple of months. And then another 36 miles of worth of projects that are in final design. Most of those are like 95 or 100% design. We're getting ready to take those out to bid within over the next 6 and 12 months. Next slide. A couple projects we opened: Inland Rail Trail early this year, the Rose Creek Bikeway in May, and then a couple projects of our current pictures of our current projects, the traffic calming on Georgia Meade Landis, and then the 4th, 5th Bikeway down there on the lower right corner. Next, please. So we have these projects that are all fully funded and going out to bid while purging We're in the bidding process now, confirming our contractor. Barrio Logan should be going out within the next month, and Imperial and Border Bay Shore several months after that, and then Inland Rail Trail Phase 3 in the spring of 2022. Next slide. We'll skip over this. So construct that design challenges and design construction. You guys know all about this. What you can find in older, more established neighborhoods, the things that you just didn't know were there, despite as many pulling records and doing core samples and all of that. There's always something, and then new since 2013, new regional requirements for stormwater treatment and things like that that really can add some design effort and certainly some significant cost to construction. Next slides. So part of our short-term strategy, we completed actually the effort to amend our fiscal year 22 budget to bring additional funding to these 5 projects to advance their implementation. We're going to skip over the details of that. So next slide, please. So we really, what I'm going to focus on is more of our long-term strategy. And that includes our Transnet ordinance amendments, and let's see, my notes here. Okay. Okay, so we've been able to be pretty successful in leveraging our local funding. We're almost at, given the actions last month by our board and accepting 2 more grant funds into the budget, we're getting pretty close to 50% match. So we want to be able to continue with that effort and complete the EAP. So currently we estimate it's probably about another $112 million to complete the projects that are in the original EAP package that were quote above the $200 million line. And so how are we proposing to do this? So we're developing this long-term strategy that includes 2 potential Transnet extension ordinance amendments and a reprioritization of future EAP projects, with which Josh will cover in more detail when I'm finished. So the first part for the proposed amendment is to potentially increase the percentage of funding that's allocated to the Bicycle Pedestrian Neighborhood Safety Program. So currently we're sitting at 2% of Transnet. And so depending on revenues, we estimate that each additional percentage point generates about $3 million a year, give or take. The second proposed amendment would be to consider moving the bike program into the major corridors program. The existing ordinance already includes a complete streets provision and direction to accommodate travel for people walking and biking. And that applies to all new projects in the region that are funded with Transnet. So you guys are all familiar with the routine accommodations policy that applies to all of our projects as well. So that applies to all of the projects really in the major corridors program that use Transnet funding. And so rethinking this aspect of how we do things will go a long way in kind of breaking down some of the more traditional siloed approaches where too frequently we only have significant bike and ped projects that are pursued as separate projects. We are looking for more opportunities. Of course, we'll always have those, but we're looking for more opportunities to integrate multiple modes of travel and into our major corridors, our CMCPs, and our mobility hub projects in the future. And so from a practical point of view, moving into the major corridors program gives us a lot more flexibility to fund and implement more active transportation projects. And so, as I mentioned earlier, the third part of the strategy is to take a fresh look at reprioritizing future EAP projects to better align with our social equity goals and future opportunities that will put us in a better position to best leverage our local funds against state and federal funds. And we kind of considering the trend, and there's already a strong trend this way, that we anticipate there'll be more outside funding opportunities that are going to arise over the next several years that are available for projects that'll help implement improvements in historically underserved and underfunded communities. Our old prioritization process that I think probably a few of you were involved in back in the day was informed by there's a lot of data and we looked at densities and attractors and generators for trips and some other factors, but we did not have social equity as part of our criteria back in the day. So we need to adjust that and integrate that into how we prioritize our network. And so with that, I think, so we're, this is a process that will be ongoing through the fall. We have different stakeholder groups that we're engaging, active transportation and CTAC, SANTEC, CMAC, mobility group, whatever we end up being, we'll be coming back to this group and others, and the social equity working group, which I'm going to in a few minutes. And we'll be reporting back to the transportation, ITAWG, and the transportation committee and the board later in the year and early next year. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Josh Clark, who is going to speak more eloquently about our proposed reprioritization process. And this is just kind of introducing it. We want to get some ideas. We will be, like I said, we will be back, but we kind of want to get the conversation going and get some of these ideas out there. So thanks, Josh, whenever you're ready.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, everyone. Just to have you following along here, I put a link in the chat to the agenda for the day, and then specifically the reprioritization is in the supporting materials. And so this is something that went out yesterday, but got updated today, and is something that we're moving quickly on. But that just is a way to keep you all apprised of it as quickly as we're moving on it. And like Chris says, to come back and just let you know where our thought process is on this, the remaining prioritization of the adopted regional bike network. And I hope that it's helpful to see in that attachment 4, which is the supporting materials. I'll share my screen just so that we are kind of moving along with a good reference together. And so here I've got it up in a browser. And just like Chris said, this is the synthesis, the regional bike network, of a lot of effort to date.
Sorry, Josh.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt. I don't think you're sharing the screen.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I think I got it there.
Oh, it is. Okay, perfect.
Thanks for letting me know, Tim. Sorry about that. So as you can see in the supporting materials, we talk about the many plans that led up to the definition of the network as we know now. And then importantly, that network is 580 miles. And as Chris mentioned, we're confident with 161 miles of those and how we're going to proceed, which is to say the class 1 bikeways that are existing, and that above the line, when we say above the line, make sure everybody knows what I'm talking about here, that above the line blue section of the EAP. And then from here, we move back to the remaining projects below the line, which we have pretty much got here in the 2035 phase year. Here I'm jumping over to the viewer, which I hope you all are familiar with using the regional networks 2035 phase year. And then the 2050 phase year is the remaining regional bike network. And those two comprise the 419 miles, which we are talking about reprioritizing. So I recommend the data viewer. Got a link to it here in the supporting materials as a good way to visualize this. Additionally, there's a table view of all of these projects, the 114 discrete rows of projects. So what we know we want to do, those projects are discrete in that they've been identified, since previous regional plans, the EAP. We have an idea of the segmentation of these. As mentioned, that's how we arrive at 114 individual segments. But for those segments, we have that idea of below the line projects phasing in by 2035 and the rest of the regional bike network in 2050. But looking at all of those, we don't necessarily have an idea of which ones we're going to approach next, following that above the line EAP in 2026, for example. So this is the way to start to rank and prioritize those with a more clear idea of which we should approach next to bring through plan, design, of environmental construction. So we know that we want to use 4 demand-based criteria at a minimum, and that's consistent with the regional plan. And those are the employment centers, population, mobility hubs, and Cal-Enviro screen. And then how it gets weighted and what the ranking looks like is something that we're going to start to analyze in a draft form, but bring back to this group. So I hope that was a helpful catch up for everyone on where we're at with this process. And I think that's it for me then.
If I can take one more second, I want to also kind of finish the bigger picture in that, this reprioritization is sort of a stepping stone to a more comprehensive regional active transportation plan. That is one of the actions coming out of the new regional plan, not yet adopted, but we are pretty sure that it will be later in this year. So I just kind of trying to get ahead of the curve here. We know that will give us the opportunity to bring in all of these different pieces together and have a more robust conversation about the different parts of kind of a regional active transportation network and how we can best tie into all the local projects, maximize the coordination on those, look at also maximizing safety and design and prioritization. And let's see, I think there's also a Vision Zero element coming out of the regional plan that, of course, we'll want to integrate with that as much as possible as well. So that's probably a couple or a few years off in the future until that's adopted. And at that time, we're also, anticipating that, none of this stuff in the regional plan is going to happen unless we get a new funding element. So we're trying to, again, get ahead of that and be prepared so we can compete as a region for the bigger state and federal construction dollars with these projects. So that's kind of a broad view of our strategy for active transportation. So thanks.
Thank you, Chris. Chairs, in light of time, I know we have some hands raised. So, we have one more item. So if members that want to make a comment, if they could keep it brief, that'd be great. And you could also include your comments on the chat too. And I'm sure if you even send them via email, I could work with Chris and Josh. But I have Tom, you have your hands up.
Yeah, thank you. So I appreciate the the report and the objectives and your approach for prioritizing the different ATP projects. So as of now, the 5 big moves is not approved. And I know there's a lot of discussion about actually what the limits of the mobility hubs will be. So I would actually, this is great. I love the process and I love you presenting the information. And I imagine that's what our future CMAC will look like, our mobility action or advisory committee will look like. I would like to see your matrix on how you actually prioritize this list that you have to determine the blue versus the green and below. And I think, yeah, it's spot on what we should be discussing. Unfortunately, there's not enough time for us to go through a detailed discussion on it, but I do appreciate you bringing this forward. And I'd like to see that makeup before we, I guess this is not a vote on issue, but like to see more information on it before we determine that prioritization. Thank you.
Yeah, I should also add and clarify one thing that that was the blue-green list of projects was the approved prioritized list from back in 2013. So those are kind of the universe of projects that we're working with and applying the reprioritization criteria that Josh kind of went over, that we'll be bringing that back to you as well. And we could go over some more. I mean, that's really kind of the direction moving forward is, well, once we're starting to get into the weeds on stuff. So I know we're short of time, but we can discuss that in more detail next time. Thanks for your.
Great, thank you, appreciate it.
Yep.
I have Nicole Burgess has her hand raised. Nicole?
Yes, thank you. And thanks, Chris. I'm Nicole Burgess from Bike SD. Thank you, Chris and Josh Clark, for the presentation and all the work that you've done over the years. I know that your reprioritization, and I know you're kind of on a strict timeline. And so the question kind of is being asked from Tom, and you're kind of leaning into all the specifics and the ranking. Is there going to be, I know that we talk about stakeholder input. Is there going to be anything before you come out with the next list to provide any information or to have any feedback with you directly before that list comes out pre-made already? Or
yeah, I think,
if you know what I'm asking.
Yeah, I think next time we meet, we'll be able to have a more detailed discussion on the criteria and what they look like. It's really pretty straightforward once you apply the kind of the social equity element to it with the Cal Enviro screen. There's different levels in Cal Enviro screen, and that's all of that is pre-baked. So we're just kind of matching up. And again, this is an interim step until we get to a bigger, but we need to catch up with the investments in places that haven't gotten any. So
for sure,
it's really, it's not that hard to conceive of what the projects are of that already identified universe once you overlay Cal Enviro, and making sure we do our best to connect to the rest of the network and address any other really obvious issues. But obviously we still have to go through the process and do that. But the criteria are really, I think, probably the data sets that we have that we know we can use that are all good quality data. We get a pretty good, we'll have a pretty good idea of what the next set of projects would be. Josh and I are just, this kind of came up pretty quick. So we're trying to work through this and do our best. We'll probably maybe do some practice runs and see what pops up and does that make sense? And we'll be back to share the criteria in more detail and maybe some preliminary results.
Okay, and I appreciate that, Chris. And just as a follow-up comment, Vision Zero is a policy that's being adopted in the new regional plan. So that should be high ranking criteria. ITALK talked about it as well. And as mentioned, mobility hubs are going to be long-term, and could that be built into mobility hub kind of funding those kind of corridors? And just, I'm not sure, I just want to be sensitive to bicycle neighborhood safety program. I totally support safe routes to schools and safe routes to transit and neighborhood safety, but there are really seriously barriers among our freeways and our rivers that we really need to address to connect those communities. And so much I appreciate you doing some work in the neighborhoods, we need to make those connections that are the most dangerous. So safety is a big criteria for me. So thank you for those comments. I want to be brief. Thanks.
So Chair, this is Alex, and for the interest of time, to be fair for the other presenter, it looks like Sam, you're not on the meeting, and I'm not sure we're going to be able to make it, so I apologize for that. So I'll work with you in maybe scheduling the item in a future meeting. And also, we continue to have comments on this, but I also want to give the opportunity if there's any additional comments, and I'll leave it up to the working groups, only because I know people are going to start dropping off. And we could always work with Chris and Josh to bring this item back. Obviously, there's more discussion and comments. So I just want to make sure that before we come to the close of hour, that everybody has an opportunity to, would that be reasonable for the working groups?
Alex, what working group are you referring to? Are you referring to just attendees to this meeting, the CTAC meeting?
No. This is a joint working group. So it's all the working groups. It's CTAC and SANTEC. And you guys too.
Okay, so if you're asking for comments, yeah, there's a couple of hands raised. I know Andy was before me, so.
And maybe Frank, let me be sorry, and I wasn't quite clear. Just general comments before the meeting ends.
Right.
I was trying to jump into the next agenda, but we could also bring more comments to this item or work with them. I just want to, because then people start dropping off, Tom. At 11, and we have a hard stop at 11 as well. Chairs?
So Alex, do you want to take item number 8 real quick, or you want to?
It's up to you guys. I just want to make sure, because otherwise the members from all working groups are going to start dropping off.
I agree with you, and I would recommend that we would basically postpone item number 8 to the next meeting.
Will do.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you very much, everyone. Let's get to the item number 9. Minji, can you please take over?
Sorry, I just turn on my microphone. Yeah, item number 9, the upcoming meetings. I think at this point we're looking at November the 18th, right? Pending further notice.
And for right, Minji, I apologize for the CTAC and SANTEC members, because it'll likely be a joint meeting. Our proposed date would be November 18th. Okay.
Very
right.
good. Yeah.
I think is the active transportation group will be part of it or not?
At this point, they meet quarterly, right, Josh, Chris?
Okay. Okay. Cool. Yeah, I was just looking at the agenda. Okay. So if any items of interest, please send to your respective chair of the committee, and we'll get it on the agenda, or you can send to SANDAG staff as well. Alex with him. Okay. With that, this meeting is adjourned unless you hear anything else.
All right. Can I suggest any member comments that we missed and they're still online, please?
Yeah, thanks, Alex. I know that I was going to make a member comment, and it's 11 o'clock, so I appreciate the hard stop. And just part of active transportation, as we were having that conversation, I had the pleasure of meeting Mayor Blake Spear and having a ride on the Inland Rail Trail that recently had a couple segments completed. And I just want to highlight just an effort by SANDAG and the active transportation team. You know, paint alone can go a huge way. And I've ridden the Coastal Rail Trail, Inland Rail Trail several times, and it's very hard to navigate. I find I have to stop and make U-turns because the sidewalk goes one way and you have to go another way. And there's little pink lavender signs, but they're very hard to find after a big red do not enter sign. So just as far as guidance, education, awareness, and overall safety for riders, and really encouraging others to really see this active transportation network, I just would highly recommend that SANDAG just throw get some people out there to paint some green striping along that corridor so we can really navigate it properly. And that was it. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. I see another hand of Tom. You have something to say?
Yeah, thank you. And thank you, Nicole, for your earlier comments about trying to focus on the high priorities for barriers to active transportation, like the interchanges. That's a comment I frequently make on the corridor meetings, which we have. And thank you, SANDAG staff, for bringing forward all these great mobility programs and projects. I just wanted to emphasize to Josh and Chris, when you're looking at the prioritization, please take a serious look at the Coastal Rail Trail. We've been after that project for 20 years plus, I think 30 years, my entire career. We've been discussing about completing that corridor. And the coastline is our biggest asset in San Diego County, arguably, but I believe most people would agree. And that corridor receives an extremely high rate of bicyclists and active transportation users. So please take a look at the real value from an equity standpoint, from a cost to benefit standpoint of completing that corridor. And I'll leave it at that, but thank you again for your efforts.
Thank you. I don't see more hands raised. So with that, I want to thank all the participants for participating in this meeting and also for SANDAG staff. And I'll see you next time. This meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.